Resident Evil 2. So I want to say something real quick before we continue. Unlike the original, unlike the previous video where I did an original versus remake, comparing, the improved gameplay mechanics and also my thoughts about it, I have a lot of thoughts about the original and the remake, so I'm going to make two separate videos if that's okay with all of you. So, yeah, so in this video, we're going to be focusing only solely on the original 1998 survival horror game, Resident Evil 2. So let's get into it. So Resident Evil 2, the player controls Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield, who must escape Raccoon City after its citizens are transformed into zombies by biological weapons 2 months after the events of the original Resident Evil video games. The gameplay focuses on exploration, puzzles, and combat. The main difference from its predecessor are the branching paths, with each player character having unique storylines, partners, and obstacles. And let's actually go into and talk about the gameplay mechanics in detail, shall we? So Resident Evil 2 is a survival horror game, and it features the same basic gameplay mechanics as its predecessor, Resident Evil. The player explores a fictional city while solving puzzles and fighting monsters. The game's two protagonists may be equipped with firearms, but limited ammunitions add a tactical element to weapon use. On the status screen, the player can check the condition of the protagonist, use medicine to heal their wounds, and assign weapons. The character's current health can also be determined by their posture and movement speed. For example, a character will hold their stomach in pain if wounded and will limp slowly if on the verge of death. The protagonist may carry a limited number of items and must store others in boxes placed throughout the game world where they may later be retrieved. Each protagonist is joined by a support partner during the course of the story. These characters accompany the player in certain scenes and occasionally become playable. Certain rooms contain typewriters that the players may use to save the game. However, each save expends one of a limited number of ink ribbons, which the player must collect in the game world. The graphics of Resident Evil 2 are composed of real-time generated and thus movable polygonal character and item models superimposed over pre-rendered backgrounds that are viewed from fixed camera angles. The game uses tank controls, meaning that pressing up movement moves the character forward, down, reverses, and left and right rotates independently of the camera perspective. The main addition over the preceding game is the zapping system, by which each of the two playable characters are confronted with different puzzles and storylines in their respective scenarios. After finishing the A scenario with the one protagonist, a B scenario in which the events are depicted from the other character's perspective is unlocked. The player may start the A scenario with either of the two protagonists, resulting in a total of 4 different scenarios. Actions taken during the first playthrough affect the second. For example, the availability of certain items may be altered. After each game, the player receives a ranking based on the total time taken to complete the scenario and on the number of saves and special healing items used. Depending on the player's accomplishments, bonus weapons and costumes may be unlocked as a reward. The original version of Resident Evil 2 contains 2 standalone mini-games, the Fourth Survivor and the Tofu Survivor, in both of these mini-games the player must reach the goal while fighting every enemy along the way with only the default item loadout. All later versions, except the Nintendo 64 version, add a third minigame, Extreme Battle, which consists of 4 playable characters and 3 stages. Alrighty, so that's basically the gameplay mechanics of the video game itself. So let's talk about the positives, and then we'll talk about the negatives. Let's break this down, shall we? So, this is a very good survival horror gameplay with many improvements from the first game. There are horrific monsters, especially the liquor, weapons parts that allow Leon to customize his handgun, shotgun, and magnum. Birkin, uh, who is the main antagonist of this game, William Birkin, mutates further as the game progresses. There are numerous puzzles. Beating the game one time allows you to replay it with the other character. Beating it again will allow access to the true ending. A and B scenario system, depending on the actions done in A scenario, some of the events in B scenario will be different. This game introduced Leon Kennedy to the franchise, who is considered the second main protagonist in Resident Evil, along with Claire Redfield, Ada Wong, and Sherry Birkin. There's also the T-103 Tyrant, nicknamed by a lot of the fans as Mr. X and by Leon in Darkside Chronicles as Trenchy. Mr. X stalks the player in the B scenario. He even mutates into a super tyrant near the end. There's also an extreme battle mode, which is available in most versions of the games. The fourth survivor and the tofu survivor modes. There's also Resident Evil 2 also has an interesting story. Story is also improved from the comical first game, along with an improved voice acting. I know a lot of people, like a shit ton of people, criticized the voice acting in the first one for being too comical and being too campy and too stupid, and being so terrible. But in here it's definitely approved. So there's that. There's extra weapons that all have infinite ammo and can be unlocked by beating the game and getting a certain rank. These weapons are automatically unlocked for the rookie difficulty. If you manage to reach to RPD without picking up any ammos or Kendo's weapon, you'll encounter zombified Brad, who, will be in Resident Evil 3, who will drop a special key that can unlock a locker in the dark room. The Nintendo 64 version of this game, Resident Evil 2, contains extra files which reference multiple games in the series. This version notably was developed by Angel Studios, who later became Rockstar San Diego. The Dreamcast version, like all of the Resident Evil games ported to the console, uniquely uses the VMU to display your character's health condition and also retains most of the features from the DualShock version and adds a new nightmare difficulty. The N64 version, although suffering from lower quality resolution and audio due to being compressed, is still technically impressive considering the PS1, PC, and Dreamcast versions use 2 CDs instead of a single cartridge. The nightmare difficulty in the Dreamcast and Windows PC version certainly lives up to its name. In this mode, enemies deal out more damage to the player, ammo and health items will become much more scarce, and certain monsters, especially the lickers, can reduce your health condition from fine to danger in one hit. But yeah, there's only for me, when it comes to like issues and difficulty, I've only managed to pick out, there's not much compared to the first game. The first game, yeah, there's definitely a lot of faults and issues, a lot, like a dozen. Here, probably I would say, the game.com version of the game is a failure. There isn't much variety in bosses. You'll mostly be fighting Mr. X or William Birkin. There is the alligator and giant moth, but they're really easy to fight. But they're not really, I wouldn't call them, the alligator and the giant moth, I wouldn't call them, bosses. I mean, they're really easy to, to kill. The only characters, the only bosses really in the game that are a pain, that keep coming back is, William Birkin and Mr. X. And, that's pretty much it. It's a limited amount of the bosses. So, yeah, that is pretty much it. That's all I have to say for Resident Evil 2. So, yeah, it took me a week to finish this game, and it took me some time for me to like really sit down and think about, okay, I know I played the game myself. I know I sat down and I played the game myself, but I have to really think about and really focus and concentrate on the story, gameplay. For me, when I watch a movie, it's very easy because I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting down and watching. That's all I'm doing. So it's very easy, super simple. But when it comes to playing video games, not only do you have to play the game, like physically play the game, but you also have to focus and pay attention to, but I'm also like focusing and paying attention to the story and the gameplay mechanics. If there's any bugs or issues or any of, any problems. And it can be very difficult for me to do that, but I think I did a pretty good job. So anyway, Resident Evil 2, if you play this game, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for thank you so much. Ugh. Let me start that over again. If you played Resident Evil 2, let me know what you thought about it. Was it easy? Was it difficult? Was it better than the first one? Did you find it to be better than the first one? I think is a better question. Yeah, let me know all about that in the comment section below. And I really do appreciate it if you would like, comment, subscribe, do all of that great stuff, and I will see all of you lovely people really soon.